Welcome to Industrial Marketing Live. I'm Erin Burish, a senior strategist here at the industrial marketing agency Gorilla 76 and one of your IML hosts. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Todd Imming, the Chief Marketing Officer at the Korte Company. And he's here to talk about how to stay true to your brand while working with agencies. So Todd, really excited to have you here. Do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Todd Imming from the Korte Company. And we are a construction company. And so if you hear like a sawzall or some sort of hammer wrench behind me, they're redoing this whole row of windows. So I hope I have 45 minutes of quiet time, but I can't guarantee any of that. So if you hear something like really loud and obnoxious, I apologize.
Todd, isn't there kind of a joke you use about how like a construction company, when you guys have downtime, you just work on your own building?
Yeah, that's not that is completely true. It's like, every other year it seems like the whole inside of this place changes. I think they're just practicing. I don't know why they do it, but I think I've lived in 7 different places in this office. So I've been here for 20 years, and yeah, they move people around depending on what season it is. So that's one of the things, one of the joys of working for a construction company. Yeah, so I can segue that right into my intro. I have been working at the Korte Company for about 20 years. Before that, I worked in marketing for a linen manufacturer, chefware, table linens, things like that. But I'm still on the marketing side. I got my start actually on the other side of the fence, through the advertising. So fresh out of school, I started with an agency in St. Louis on the account side of things, and then through the years, I worked with a bunch of copywriters, designers, things like that. Carried that over into marketing and carried that into the Korte Company, and that's where I'm at right now.
Awesome. Well, maybe before we get into our questions for Todd, I'll put out a quick icebreaker for people to answer in the chat. Love to hear from you all. Like, what kind of challenges or wins are you having right now with your own company branding, or questions you might have for today's discussion and things you're hoping to get out of it? Love to hear about your own personal, well, not your personal branding, but the branding for your specific company. But Todd, I know you said you've been with Korte for 20 years. Can you give us a little bit of background on how the Korte brand was built?
Sure. Korte was founded in 1958. Ralph Korte started building, and it's a great story. So he started building basically milking parlors and barns for neighbors. This is a very small rural Illinois town, and so Ralph Korte was building projects and farms for his neighbors. That sort of blossomed into doing bigger projects, more projects. Neighbors got further away. Through the years, we expanded in Illinois into Missouri, started doing projects for the Department of Defense, blossomed into other projects, other larger projects. Projects got bigger. Today we do projects across the country for brands like USPS, Amazon, like I said, the Department of Defense, Lidl, all over the place. So there's healthcare, distribution centers. We've got education, rec centers, religious facilities, you name it. So we've got a number of different pillars of different types of projects, and I think we're operating currently we're operating in 20 states, have completed projects in 44 states across the country. So, and that's where we're at now. And every day is a little bit different, especially from the marketing side, but also the production side. Every project is unique, each with its own challenges. Owner challenges, site challenges, construction challenges, all of materials challenges. All of those things come into play.
Yeah. And Todd, you're a marketing team of one, and you have been for many years, at least internally to Korte. So what has like your experience been building the brand over all these years?
Sure. I think I'm my own worst nightmare, because when I came into Korte, I totally threw away everything. And I think about that, and I think about the people that came before me. I'm like, man, that was an awful day for them. But I think the brand was old, and I think it needed definitely needed some juice. Well, I can go back a few years before that, because it's not the first time I've done I've done this terrible thing. The job before this is the linen manufacturer. The brand was dated. I came in, and I had I guess I had the ability, and I guess I was lucky enough that no one was really watching what I was doing too closely, and I kind of threw everything out and I started over. I had a good buddy, designer friend that I worked with at the Puckett Group, was the agency that I came from, and started working closely with this designer on rebranding for this company called Artex. And one thing led to another, and we were able to do a complete rebrand. And within, I don't know, 6 to 8 months, we rebranded that, and it went fairly smoothly. So step forward, 5, 6 years, I came into the Korte Company, and the stuff was, that I was looking at was from like 1982. It was, it didn't really mean a whole lot. There wasn't any real backing behind what the color scheme was, what the logo meant. There were swirls, there are just elements. It was, again, it was the 80s. Maybe, it probably had a place. But when I got in there, it was like the first thing I noticed, like, this is such a cool company with such a great story, and no one's told it. And I knew that from an outsider. I had never worked, construction or been close to the industry, but I knew about Ralph Korte, and I knew about, where it all came from. It was almost like folklore. I grew up in the same small Highland, Illinois town. And so when I got here, like, well, this is really what this company is about. And I don't know if that was just a common sense approach or some innate, some divine intervention, but that I knew that's where this needed to go. And the blessing of being a marketing person or marketing group of one is like, I think sometimes committees crush ideas. They're safer, but sometimes you get bogged down in a circle of ideas that just sort of overlap and sort of cancel out each other. So I think I'm getting back to your point, but being a marketing group of one, I think definitely has its advantages, especially when, here's the plug for Gorilla 76, when you can surround yourself with a ton of smart people, and you're able to trust what they do. You can carry on about driving, I use this little metaphor, you're driving the boat, but you don't know how the engines really work. But your job is to drive the boat. You don't have to worry about, how that thing's chugging, but it's chugging.
So speaking of chugging, when we're talking about a strong brand, what all encompasses that? Like, what does it take to build that strong brand? Is it like establishing the emotional resonance, or is it more about the logo and the tagline and, putting it all together in the website? Like, what do you think is really at the core there?
Oh man, well, if I answer the very last part of that first, the core, that's gotta be authenticity. that's really everything, being genuine, having a story, staying true to that story. And with that story, the beginning, you have pretty much everything, at least for me, at least with the Korte Company, I had everything that I needed. You know, this was founded in 1958, Ralph Korte, you know, built on these Midwestern values, you know, strength and passion, and, you know, wanting to do the job right, wanting to do it the first time, you know, the job, all that came from this heritage, this genuine story about a guy wanting to do a good job. Period. That was it. Everything else followed. And then that includes, you know, the branding, the logo, the build smart, the job is the boss. That all really stems from that main storyline of this is our heritage. This is what we're proud of. This is what we've built. This is what we put our name on, you know, literally the Korte. We're proud enough of what we do that, you know, our name is on everything. I don't know if that answered everything, Alan, but the core is really the being genuine and being authentic, and everything else is like telling that story in a way that engages other people to be interested in that and feel that same power of, yeah, this is real, this is true. You know, people want to say, yeah, I get it. I maybe I don't, maybe it's like I don't want to be that guy, but I understand what I understand exactly what he stands for. There's nothing that is like blurred or unfocused about what this company is all about.
Yeah, and that probably allows it to be a lot easier to be consistent throughout your different pieces of content and having a clear perspective and a clear voice. That's something that from the agency side makes it a lot easier, is we've created that kind of Korte character, what we call the Korte man over here. That, you know, we talk about him being like Sam Elliott with an architect degree, that, you know, allows us to create a company voice that always stays true to those values and that underpinning character. So yeah, that makes it a lot easier on our end too, I think, as we're speaking from the writing department.
Yeah, and going to your point of the Sam Elliott, yeah, that's that whole Korte tone is like in my head, that tone is Sam Elliott, you know, leaning back on a faded blue, you know, it gets pretty deep. Leaning back on a faded old, you know, Ford pickup truck on a hill overlooking a job site. You know, it all plays over in my mind over and over when I sit down, and sometimes I write. But yeah, that's the guy. And even on our voiceovers, I got a Sam Elliott look-alike, sound-alike guy to do our voiceovers. I mean, it goes that deep.
Yeah, consistency is key.
Maybe we should have Sam Elliott come over here and just hang out with Korte.
Yeah, that would be a great celebrity guest day.
It would be cool.
Well, speaking of consistency, Luke had a great question in the chat. So throughout the like history of your company, have you ever found yourself with like a lot of micro brands that you've had to manage and make cohesive? So like multiple URLs, logos, multiple markets even that were branded slightly differently, and you had this challenge of like kind of bringing them together and making them cohesive?
5 Twitter accounts, Todd. Remember those days?
Yeah. 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 So the answer is yes. You know, we've got Korte Design, we've got Korte Interiors, you know, they're little sub companies. I mean, they all fall into the Korte bucket. And I don't know if we're any different than any other company, but you know, the folks down the hall at Interiors, they want to feel, you know, like they're unique also, which is fine. And you don't want to be like, you know, the overseer of all that is true to your brand too much, but you have to do a little bit of that wrangling and get everyone in on it, so they're not doing something, you know, crazy stupid. It brings me to the point, like marketing has no at least here, marketing has no control over how people sign off on their emails. And I think we talked about this yesterday. It's like one of the most frustrating things that, like, from a marketing perspective, like, oh my gosh, why can't IT just like force it upon everyone so you don't do like idiotic stuff with your signature? Just make it all the same. And so I think I'm getting back to your point. There's a certain point you can do with the different sub brands that are out there, and luckily, again, marketing group of one, they usually come to me before I see something crazy out there. But that's not all the time. And so you kind of, you gotta play that kind of, politically a little bit. You're kind of on the fence. You don't want to like come crushing down on them, but you have to say, hey, this is the brand. We do have brand standards, and and I think that's part of like who I am. I don't want to like, oh, I can't believe you did that. This is ridiculous. You got to pull that right now. It's like, hey, I'll work with you. Let's, I know you want to do something different. Let's use, let's use some Korte elements here, and we'll build you something. So I think, helping rather than like, slamming them for stuff is one way to fix it. It's one solution.
Mhm.
So,
And
go ahead.
speaking of that, like knowing how tightly to control other people's processes and when to kind of let people work. I think that also probably applies to working with an agency, perhaps even more so because you're not all under the same roof. So what can be kind of lost in translation when you're working with a different party like an agency? And how do you kind of keep your hands on the wheel and make sure that you stay on the path without, over managing people and, maybe stifling creativity or whatever it may be?
Yeah, so what's always worked for me is, if you get something on the first round, it's a blessing. Whether it's a copy or design or a mixture of both, an ad, collateral pieces. And I've always had, I've always had pretty good luck with first rounds. Talking about, before version 2 comes out, that's a great landing spot for both parties to come together. As long as you're cool with not having V1 be a perfect gem, that's great, because you're both, from the agency side, you're trying to read the mind of marketing person's trying to like convey in the best way he or she knows how to creatives, which is different than account people, to creatives that this is the general area I want. And then you have to like fully trust them and say things like, we've seen this before. We got this in a blog over here, and we've got this part over here, and we've got this part about cold storage that's written over here. These are, go find those things and put those things together, and then show me what you have. And it's not going to be perfect, but you're both opening that line of communication and that full trust, going both ways. And I think that's one of the things that has really worked for me. It's just, you all, the agency, you all do what you do. I'm just gonna, watch this unfold, and then from there, we'll fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the analogy we were playing around with is that, you as the marketer of one over there are driving the car, and the agency kind of serves as your engine.
Yeah. Yeah, I want the kind that, goes around and like fills the tires and the little uniforms and does the oil and
Yeah, the picture too.
The 1950s version. Pull into
man.
the station.
Gotta put Alan to work on those oil changes, I guess.
Yeah.
So, while we're kind of talking about, one thing you brought up a lot was like trust. Like, it's really important that you trust your partner, and it's this give and take of like, equipping them with information they need, and then trusting their creative process to do what they do best. what advice do you have for, I guess, like building that trust with an agency or identifying the right partner that you can trust?
Sure. I'm gonna date myself, but back in the agency days, Buster Brown was an account. Not the 1940s Buster Brown shoes. They came back. They had a resurgence in the 90s. Okay, so not that old, but had a marketing person from Brown Group, and we pitched this thing, and it was good. It was smart. It had all the things, and we're thinking, oh, this is Addies. We're pulling some Addies off of this thing, and it was great. Presented it, and they're like, nope, no. And to this day, it's why I got out of I got into marketing. Like, I cannot believe that they don't see what we see. They don't get it. Why aren't they listening? And it was upsetting. And so I was one of the reasons I went to marketing. And anyway, from that, it was you just have to just believe in the agency, and you have to believe in the people you work with. Again, you surround yourself with smart people. So heard it once before. You don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. I really don't have a problem with that ever happening, but you surround yourself with people who know exactly what the social platforms are doing, exactly what SEO, how to become more powerful there, how exactly what the design should look like, and you have all these experts, and you take from this pool of creativity and thoughtfulness, and it's intuition, and that's what helps drive. It really comes back to trust. I don't know if I truly answered your question there.
Oh, no, I think that makes sense. But when it comes to, that trust, do you need to pair that trust with strict guardrails for the brand just to like make sure that it doesn't get too far in any one direction? Or do you feel like the softer guardrails are better?
For me, yeah, it's a little bit like bumper bowling, but those guardrails are, I mean, they're there for a purpose, and as a marketing person, that's your job. You have to know when those guardrails are supposed to be hard, or it's marketing. If you take a risk and you fail, no one's going to die. It'll be fine. You can fix it. Sometimes it's good to go with the rails off and just see where this thing goes. I mean, we've done it a couple times, got burned a couple times. Sometimes it was cool. But yeah, if you don't take those risks, you're just, gonna be boring.
Mm-hmm.
Boring's sometimes good, but sometimes you just, again, trust. If your agency is taking you to a place that you're not comfortable with, well, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you should not be comfortable. You should, not being comfortable is where a lot of cool things happen.
And you have to be able to trust your gut to know, I guess, when the good risks are in front of you and when maybe it's something that you should try to pass on.
Yeah, when someone from, some top person at Korte's like yelling at me, telling me that I was stupid, then I know that, yeah, I should probably not done that. No,
Oh, for sure.
sorry, Alan. No, you're exactly right. I think marketing as a whole, the people who are marketers or in advertising, that creative realm, I think there's a lot of gut instinct that goes along with the decisions you make. I mean, you can have all the education in the world, and diplomas on your wall, whatever, you gotta have a sensibility of what the brand means. And I think when I say that, I think empathy is like one of the biggest and most powerful tools a marketer can have. Putting yourself in someone else's shoes and thinking what they think, as not just one person, but a whole demographic. What do these people, what does our target think about this? What does an owner think about the Korte Company? What does a subcontractor think about the Korte Company? What does a regular person walking through a hospital hall that we may have constructed, what do they think about this, what they're walking through? So I think being able to like take that perspective is pretty important. At least that's how I approach a lot of projects that I do.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, such an important foundation. I think like it's easy to say like, oh, brand is fluffy, it's not tangible, but I think that's so valid, that empathy and trusting your gut is important in this type of work, because it does have a huge impact. As you can clearly see in the Korte brand. I don't know if we've put it in the chat yet if anybody wants to drop their website, but it's just like incredible to see how it all comes together, and every presence online and in person.
Sorry,
I
go
did
ahead.
want to. Oh no, you go ahead, Todd.
No, well, if the funny thing is that you said brand is a living thing. It truly is. I believe it's an organism of, it changes over time. I mean, if you look at the Korte brand today, you look at it 20, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 7 years ago, you're like, wow, you're constantly evolving, you're constantly changing. It sounds totally counterproductive, that the brand should stay true. The elements that made the brand, the philosophy, the principles of the brand stay true, but everything else is kind of growing around it. It's evolving, but never ever leaving. Kind of like I don't know, I'm trying to think of some crazy metaphor similarly. The solar system, the sun's always there. We're always like moving around, constantly changing. That was pretty weak, though. Should be better.
Yeah, we use North Star a lot. There's a lot of, I don't know, space analogies there. I did want to bring up Joel, because in the chat earlier I asked, what other people's experiences are managing their brand, particularly if they have a lot of sub brands. And Joel mentioned that they deal with that 6 operating companies under 4 brands. So Joel, if you want to come on and maybe talk about your experience a little bit and advice you have for kind of managing a couple different brands under an umbrella.
Yeah, so my experience has been interesting because I came into the company right after they pivoted the brand. So our 2 core brands are Stresscrete and King Luminaire. And when I came in, we had just branded as Stresscrete Group, so put in kind of an umbrella brand. So different from a few people in the chat, we actually had a lot of name recognition and market recognition as those 2 brands. But part of the reason for it was we acquired another company. So our 3rd brand we have is King Cast Foundry. And then I got to be part of our 4th brand, Spartan Sports Lighting, and rolling that out. So it's been really interesting, different contexts, different people understand it different ways. Even internally, different departments, their experience with it, they respond to it differently. Our accounting thinks in operating companies. So like I said, we have 6 operating companies, but 3 of those are under one banner. And then our 4th brand is actually not an operating company. It's just like a DBA. So depending on who I'm speaking with, their understanding of the brand is different. So working through, we're doing a corporate video update right now, updating our health and safety video, and every stakeholder internally that I work with is interpreting it differently. But then with the agency that we're working on the video with, their understanding is, in line with how I'm trying to present it, from the branding, keep it consistent with our website and how we go to market and keep that all consistent. But there's a little bit of pushback against our accounting on the executive team that the wording in the corporate video, they're like, well, no, these are an operating company, not a brand, or vice versa. The one that's not an operating company, they wanted to roll it in. They view it as a product line of one of the other brands, but it's not how we go to market. So there's definitely challenges with it, and being able to adapt and understand where everyone's coming from has been the biggest lesson of, like I said, their experience or exposure to the brand shapes their understanding of it.
Yeah, that's often our biggest challenge, is trying to communicate how leadership understands something to how the customer base understands something. It can be easier or harder depending on what you're working on.
Yeah, well, and for us, the sports lighting one is probably the biggest one because it is just an operating company. It's important to that market segment that we went to market as a company, because that immediately put us in as number 2. There's only one of our competitors that can do all of the different pieces, single manufacturer. But internally, it's the different operating companies are all making components for the finished product. So they're all understanding of it. Even the sales team, how they sell it, they're like, well, it's no different. It's, it leads to their commissions are all, lumped into the larger companies as well. So everybody they talk to has a different understanding, and just like Todd said, the empathy, understanding where they're coming from to be able to reframe the information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's probably still a core message that everyone would agree with. Just trying to figure out which one that is.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thanks, Joel. That was great. And Todd, kind of going back to you to revisit a topic we touched on already a little bit, but where do you see the Korte brand right now, and what is driving its evolution? What's pushing you forward to try to make tweaks along the way without losing that core brand?
Technology, in one word. When I started here, print ads, that was it. Print ads and brochures. I had no idea what was coming, and how powerful social media has become, and how much it has driven every initiative, across the world, every company, every marketing person, either you love it or hate it, or some, both. For me, I mean, keeping up with the cool kids is hard. What's going on? What is the next thing? Is Threads something that should be cool? I don't know. I don't even know what acronyms are for half of the things that everyone is doing. We joke about that all the time. Like I'm a marketing person. I'm supposed to know this stuff. I don't. I know what makes sense. I can put, I can tell you in a sentence what I want, but I cannot use the cool terms. I don't know if that makes me a dinosaur. At least I'm a dinosaur that knows that he's a dinosaur, or quickly becoming one. So yeah, back to answer that, it's definitely technology. It's definitely how we reach people. That being said, the technology is how we reach people. The story doesn't change. The image doesn't change. The brand doesn't cave, no matter, I know the brand evolves, but whether you're on X or Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever, how you're reaching them doesn't matter. Radio, TV, that story has to be true, it has to be engaging, and it has to be, obviously true, believable, genuine. If you lose any of that, it doesn't matter how many posts you're putting out there. It's got to be, it's got to circle back to the brand and mean something. And I'm guilty of posting for the sake of posting. I've caught myself doing it. And I don't know, volume versus, content, good content. Sometimes it's a trade-off. But I think if someone says they know the answer, I don't believe it, because I don't think anyone knows the answer.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of questions that have difficult answers, I'm sure it's even more difficult now that more people on the team, are posting on LinkedIn or have the ability to kind of share information about the brand, as Korte employees. You have to be able to allow them to communicate as themselves, but also maintain that brand messaging and make sure that they are representing the company appropriately. So is that something that has been challenging for you, or how have you all been going about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. 5 or 6 years ago, we tried to get ahead of that, and actually I made up what was called a social media group, 5 or 6 people that were active. And so we actually had, templates. Here's a good post. We would give them once a month, we'd have like 4 or 5 things that they could post out. And here's some body copy you might want to use along with that. Well, that lasted all of 2 months. No one did it. And now it's a different world than it was 5 years ago. Everyone is out there on LinkedIn or whatever, platform of all of them, platforms of their choice. And there is no policing that. And I don't know if you really want to police that. I think you want to encourage that. And there's no way you can see what everyone is posting about the Korte Company or about anyone. So you have to, again, you have to trust them. And the only way that you put the kibosh on is if you see someone that is like doing it all wrong. And I haven't really seen that. I mean, there are things that don't necessarily go along with the Korte tone, but that's not person XYZ's tone. So again, this whole trust thing, it will all be good in the long run. They don't mean the company any harm. They're probably not going to do the company any harm by posting what they feel is genuine and true.
Mm-hmm. And that comes back to having a brand that is genuine and true, because if they are being honest about the company, then it's going to reflect what your brand is doing already anyway, right?
Yeah, that is, in a perfect world, that's how it's supposed to work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great closing thought, that the channels, the technology are going to change, your employees and individual people's, voice and spin is going to change. But if the core of the brand is well defined and strong and kind of rooted in empathy, it'll be good in the long run. And it's your job as the marketer to kind of be driving that truck. But it's a big truck. You can't control every single piece of it. So that's really, really great stuff. Thank you so much, Todd, for joining us today.
Sure, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We'll just wrap up with a couple invites and info before we shut down the meeting room here. Your invitation always open to join the Industrial Marketing Collective. That is kind of the online community, the name that we've given to this group of industrial marketers that gather in many forms. If you're interested in joining, there's discussions. There's a lot of value in the free version. There's also paid version that includes like 10+ hours of courses, weekly office hours to get kind of consulting and help. So if you're interested in either version, head to the industrialmarketingcollective.com, or just message any of us and we can get you in there. The Slack channel is also still operating. So if you have questions about joining IMC, you can put that in Slack. Or if you want to join Slack, you can still join Slack too. We also have, I don't know if everyone saw this yet, but the Industrial Marketing Summit early registration is open for 2025. So that is going to be in February this year, the 26th through the 28th, back in Austin, Texas. And yeah, like I said, early bird registration is open now. So that is industrialmarketingsummit.com. And again, if you can't find it, just message any of us. I know a bunch of people have been posting about it on LinkedIn too. And then our next episode of IML is going to be June 20th, and it's going to be all about your personal career growth as an industrial marketer. So we'll get some great advice from Sammy Birch of Mission Design and Automation. You can catch that live on June 20th, or as always, the recording will be on YouTube. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone. We will see you soon for the next live episode. And thanks again, Todd, for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Todd.
Sure thing.